Imagine that a house has developed a soul, and this soul is incredibly stubborn. It sits on a quiet street in the suburb, its paint peeling like sun-scorched skin, looking at the market with cold, unblinking eye. It knows it is worth $500,000, but it also knows that the person who wants to enter it hasn't been born in the right decade yet. Across the ocean, there is a machine that eats sunlight and spits out glass rectangles. It makes so many of them that they are becoming more common than windows, accumulating in piles like discarded game pieces in a casino that never closes. These two things seem to belong to different universes, but they are actually the right and left lungs of a very sick giant. We have entered an era where class rules have been taken behind the shed and quietly retired. People were told that prices would drop when they stopped buying, but current prices hang in the air like a magician's assistant refusing to obey gravity. This is a mathematical calamity where the numbers on the screen no longer represent the reality of the earth. The American dream has moved into a sensory deprivation tank with a Wi-Fi password. This is a space where a 31-year-old professional with a perfect credit score and a mountain of savings is told there's a ghost in their own economy. They stand at the threshold of a door that will not open. Holding a key the bank has decided not to produce anymore. The world is currently conducting a collective experiment to see how long we can stare at a broken clock before admitting it is broken. We are looking at a landscape where the low interest rate of the past, which feels like it's out of a fairy tale, is the most expensive thing you can own. It is a story of one empire trapped in a block of ice and another burning its own furniture to keep the lights on. But let's stop pretending everything is normal. This was a collective fever dream. In 2020, those who managed the world's money felt cold and decided to pour liquid lightning into the furnace. By reducing the cost of borrowing to almost zero, they turned the financial system into a golden fountain that everyone tried to drink from at the same time. For a brief moment, it felt magical, as if the concept of cost had been erased from the hard drive of civilization. People realized that if they didn't have to go to the office, they didn't have to live in a city that smelled of exhaust and broken promise. They fled the concrete towers and descended upon quiet town, the hunger of thousands low. This sudden migration turned small town homes into luxury assets. In places like Austin or Phoenix, the price of a roof increased by 60% in the time it takes a toddler to learn to. If you bought a house during this window, you didn't make a smart investment, you just won a lottery you didn't know you were playing. So why did the music stop so suddenly, leaving everyone barefoot in a room without chairs? That ghost that shrinks your pocket while you're wearing it. Inflation reached a height of 9 points, and central banks panicked. They tried to put the lightning back in the bottle by increasing the cost of money at the fastest rate in the last 40 years. This created a monster that feeds on the future. Today, if you want to buy the same house your neighbor bought 4 years ago, the bank will demand an extra $1,000 every month for the privilege of existing in the same school district. The same carpet, the same leaky faucet, even the same rotten wall. But the price of the dream has doubled. The result is a phenomenon called the lock-in effect. But you should think of it as a financial hostage situation. Half of the people with mortgages are sitting on interest rates below 4% that no longer exist in the wild. If they sell their homes to move, they would have to pay a $65,000 ransom to the bank just to get a new loan. So they stay in houses that are too small, in neighborhoods they no longer like, and in cities where they have no friends. They are physically anchored to a piece of land by a spreadsheet. The real estate market hasn't crashed, it has just stopped breathing, vibrating in place like a door stuck in its frame. While the West turns into silent and frozen rooms, the East is working like a factory that forgot to turn off the light. In the late 70s, a man stood before a crowd in China and said that getting rich was a form of national religious practice. This unlocked a hunger that turned a billion people into a single, synchronized heartbeat of production. This heartbeat became so loud that it drowned out the industrial sounds of the rest of the world. It was a miraculous way to turn human sweat into global dominance, but eventually it hit a wall made of its own success. When you become the factory for everything, you eventually have no one left to sell to, yet the machines are designed never to slow down. This is where internal regression, involution begin, a word that sounds like a spiral but feels like suffocation. It's what happens to a student who works 20 hours a day for a grade that no longer guarantees a job, or a factory that produces 10 million solar panels when the world only needs 5. The art of working more efficiently for a smaller prize. The Chinese economy has entered a race to the bottom where the only prize is staying in the race for one more day. Companies are selling goods for less than their cost, hoping their competitors exit the stage first. This isn't a race of innovation, it's a race to see who can survive on the thinnest oxygen. Why would a government allow its factories to lose money on every car and every battery they produce? Because in a system where production is the only proof of power, stopping the assembly line is seen as a surrender. Rather than admit the miracle has reached its limit, they prefer to flood the world with cheap goods and put every other manufacturer out of business. This is strategic cannibalism. They are trying to own the entire board of the next century by making everything so cheap that no one can compete. They are losing billions today so that tomorrow the world has no other choice but them. It is a high-stakes poker game where the house is betting on the future of its own middle class. However, empires have been trying this move since the days of the Caesars. In the end is always written with the same ink. Rome tried to solve its problems by flooding the streets with cheap grain until the people growing the grain could no longer afford to eat. They optimized food sources so much that they ruined the people who were supposed to defend the border. The British did the same with coal. They pulled so much coal from the ground that the price fell like a fly below the floorboard, leaving the miners trying to survive in the middle of a mountain of fuel. This is the tragedy of being too good at what you do. When you master the art of cheapness, you eventually realize you have made the people producing it too cheap to survive. Back in the suburbs, our friend Maya is looking at real estate sites for the 16th time this week. She earned $74,000 a year, which in another era would have made her successful. But today's world math says she is $22,000 short of affording a basic life. Maya's failure is not personal, it is structural. She lives in a world where the ladder to the middle class has been pulled up and the people at the top are charging a fee just to look at the rung. The first-time homebuyer is now 40 years old, 12 years older than the age their parents were when they started their lives. This shift is not just a number on a page, it is the delay of life itself. Millions of people are postponing having children, getting married, or starting businesses because they are waiting for a house that will never be affordable. The Great Stagnation is a thief that steals the most productive years of a generation while telling them to be patient. The solution everyone prays for, a sudden drop in interest rates, might actually be a poison apple with bright red skin. If rates drop too fast, millions of people holding their breath will try to breathe at the same time. This will rocket prices toward the moon and make the problem even more severe. The most honest path ahead is a painful and boring step through the mud. It is a 10-year process where prices stay flat and wages try to catch up. A slow motion correction that feels like watching grass grow in a desert. There are no heroes in this narrative and no quick fixes that won't break something else without cost. We are witnessing the death of the starter home concept. Small and simple houses built for new families. In the 70s, builders would do this, but today they only build massive fortresses for the rich because that's where the profit is. The bottom of the ladder hasn't just been moved, it has been dismantled and sold as scrap rusted metal. 2008 comparisons are a ghost story told by people who don't understand the current darkness. That crisis was built on people who couldn't pay their bill, but this crisis is built on those who can. Home equity is a $35 trillion mountain, a fortress of wealth that protects those inside but locks everyone else out. This creates a society of two different species, those who caught the magic of 2020 and those who were a minute late. One group accumulates wealth while they sleep, while the other runs on a treadmill slowly inclining upward. This is a chasm that cannot be crossed with hard work or a better resume. It can only be crossed with time. Across the ocean, the Chinese worker is on a similar treadmill, but theirs is going 1,000 miles an hour. They produce the future of the world, batteries and panels, but their own wages remain flat and their own cities become more expensive. They are the engine of a world where almost everything is getting cheaper, but they cannot buy the things they build. The global economy is currently a tug of war between a freeze and a fire. The West is frozen with high costs and low supply, while the East is burning its resources to maintain the illusion of growth. Both systems are being optimized for a version of reality that no longer exists, trying to fix a radically rearranged world with old tools. If you feel like the game is rigged, it's because you are playing by the rules of a manual written for a different game. The expectation that you could work a normal job and own a home at age 30 was a temporary glitch, a brief window in history, and that window is now closed. We are returning to an older and harsher reality where stability is a luxury. Why does every realtor tell you now is a great time to buy? Because their ledger only stays open when you sign your name. Even if the machine is heading toward a cliff, they are incentivized to keep the machine moving. They want you to ignore the fact that the average family is $20,000 short of the income required for the average home. The truth is that saying no to a bad deal is the only real power you have left. In a world of high prices and higher rates, renting and investing, the difference is actually the only logical path. But the culture hates this idea because there is no commission involved or a long-term debt to keep you tied to a specific table. We are living in the wreckage of an era where money was free and production was infinite in the ruins of a miracle. The ledger hasn't closed yet, but the ink is drying and the final figures are beginning to emerge. This is a surreal theater where the actors have forgotten their line, but the audience is too afraid to leave their seat. The debt monster that eats the future is now sitting at the dinner table looking at the portions of the next generation. Whether it's a 30-year mortgage in Ohio or a solar factory in Shenzhen, the bill comes in the form of a less flexible and more fragile world. We are slowly trading our freedom of movement for the illusion of security. When history books are written about this moment, they won't talk about a sudden explosion. They will talk about the Great Stagnation, where the world became so efficient and so expensive that it forgot to turn the page. This is a mystery wrapped in a mortgage, a puzzle hidden in a shipping container, and we are all trying to find the exit. The reality of the land is that nothing remains frozen forever, but the thaw will happen much lower and more quietly than everyone is prepared for. It is a slow 10-year correction, where the winner is the one who refuses to panic and understands that the numbers are lying to everyone right now. If this perspective feels like cold water splashed on your face, because we have been sleeping in a warm bed of lies for too long. The world isn't ending, but the version we were promised has left the state. Now, it is up to us to build something new from the frozen lands and piles of glass rectangles. Keep your eyes not on the numbers being shouted at you from the screen, but on the numbers that matter. The only way to survive in a market that has lost its mind is to keep your own. The house may be stubborn and the factory may be crazy, but the option to wait for the moment when math makes sense again is always yours. The ledger is still being written, and the final chapter belongs to those who can see the mist within the frost and the heat within the fire. The world is a theater of the absurd right now, but the show must eventually end, and the lights will come back on. And to see more of these, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and discuss in the comments. Until then, stay true to the reality of your own pocket and the logic of the land.